watching BRANDCORE with the officers, where each week we discuss a different topic related to foods, brands, and businesses. We always have an interview format, and some of the guests that we've featured today to date include entrepreneurs, food packaging experts, photographers, strategists. Today we're going to be joined by Megan O'Donnell from Mod Project. Megan has an incredible experience, 20 plus years working with all kinds of amazing big brands. And she is going to tell us why purpose is such a critical part of having an effective brand strategy and any other strategy. So I am just going to look for Megan. So you probably heard sort of my semi-intro before you joined us, that you've got 20 plus years experience as a strategist. So our focus is very much on food brands, but, and so you've worked with Cadbury and Red Bull, but of course you've worked with Nike, Sony, Google.
Lots of different brands over the years.
Yeah. So, I'd love to sort of start by just a simple explanation from you, explaining what you do and what drives you.
So I guess, kind of that 20 plus years has really been working kind of both with creative brand agencies and also going client side for a period of time. And now I'm wearing a consultancy hat. So I've kind of done the full journey. For me, over that period, I've just been really fortunate to be working, I guess, in a creative environment, working with incredible creative people, of which Jeffrey and yourself have been some over the years, solving really interesting business problems and challenges. Along the way here and there, doing some work with those creative people, whether they be clients or other creatives that have had a real impact. So I think, they're kind of always been my big themes. And then, in more recent years as a working mum, and my husband and I also have an online business, we, consultancy gives me the flexibility. And to be honest, I'm really enjoying just the breadth of different businesses I get to work with. I've been very fortunate to work with big brands, but I've been working with startups and scale ups, and I've really kind of enjoyed the mix that I've kind of got exposure to through my consulting business. So that's been great. Kind of getting a bit of Zoom fatigue for sure. It's a really interesting challenge doing this type of work over in a virtual context, but the upside of that has been enormous, because I guess, my biggest fear consulting was that, and being in WA was potentially going to be the isolation, and it's actually been an incredible COVID upside for us. So,
chasing you from all over the country and around the world.
I feel more accessible, so in a funny kind of way. So it's great.
Yeah. That's great. So a little sort of hint that you dropped just there was solving business problems. And would you agree, I mean, that is ultimately what a strategist does. So, there is a bit of a misunderstanding. Some people use that word very loosely. They think that if there's a campaign, we're going to do this or that to our prices, or we're going to sell here, or we're going to launch a product, they think that's a strategy. But do you want to expand on that a little bit more and explain how strategy solves business problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me over my career, and definitely at times have worked on very tactical kind of campaigns and immediate quick fix problems, but they're often, they're a symptom of something else that's going on in the business. It's a business that potentially hasn't been innovative enough and has lost its competitive advantage, or it's a business that has lost its traction with its customers, or customers are going to competitive brands. So really, you can't really solve it. They're all just quick fix band-aids, often throwing money at highly inefficient, often, exercises that, are real, in my experience as a strategist, really kind of going back to the source of that problem, which is really, where this kind of I guess, area of opportunity with purpose really kind of was something that came to the fore for me as a strategist, was that you would often go back and kind of go, well, you know, where have these issues come from? And, you know, what about the business do we need to look at and potentially reshape or redefine or go back to more often than not, to then kind of move forward and have a clear strategic vision moving forward. And a lot of these other issues then kind of have a clear path for being resolved outside of just throwing money at tactics. So I think, you know, that's often where I think that, and great strategists are really good at doing that. And I think that's why really good strategists often become great partners to their clients. You know, they really partner with them. They really understand their business, become an extension of their team. So, you know, and that's, I guess, also one of the reasons why I've thoroughly enjoyed kind of fulfilling that role in various different hats over the years, has been, you know, that partnership and working with clients to solve real kind of problems at the core of the business versus, you know, it's always fun to do great kind of creative marketing and advertising campaigns, but, you know, I think that they're far more successful and effective when they come from a really well-grounded kind of strategy that's embraced in the business.
That invisible side of the business, but that is just so meaningful, and that drives all the outputs. Yeah,
totally.
And I guess the sort of the I don't know, almost like a tagline, you can explain what it is, but of your business, is that it's the Purpose Academy. So you're the mod project, but it's the Purpose Academy. So, you know, just to sort of talk about that a little bit more, you know, there are some businesses that are kind of, you know, often quoted because they have such a purpose that's just so meaningful. You know, Apple, think different, or Nike, just do it. But there must be a lot of businesses that also struggle to articulate their purpose. How do you help those businesses? Because some people really are just there to just make great jam, or, you know, the best dog food possible, or the best frozen meals. Totally. So how do you kind of dive deep and sort of, I guess, extract meaning in those sorts of situations?
I guess for me, over the years, and the Purpose Academy and what I do is kind of built off a framework that is, I guess, a blueprint that really is there as building blocks for businesses to really kind of work out and go through a process to work out what their purpose, you know, how to articulate their purpose in a really meaningful way. And, you know, purpose, I think, and I could be hijacking one of your questions, but purpose in many ways today is kind of mixed up with this whole like social license to operate and to have a bigger impact on but really purpose can be very, very simple. Most businesses are born out of and created out of solving a problem, you know. It's or inspired by a story that's really at the heart of why that business was created. And my blueprint, and I've got an online course which really simplifies it. So it's a DIY process for smaller businesses who don't necessarily have the funds or the time to engage a strategic consultant to do it with them. Right through to, I use this same blueprint if I'm doing a high-end big corporate, you know, working with their board or their C-suite kind of strategy. The building blocks are all the same. It's just, you know, that kind of hands-on taking them through it. But really there's kind of 4 key areas to it. And it's, you know, the foundations of a purpose really are, you know, what's in your DNA. To that point I was just talking about, why was your business created? You know, if it's a jam, for example, was it just, my grandmother had this incredible strawberry jam recipe that, you know, whenever I share it with family members, everyone thinks it's the best they've ever had and they've never tasted anything like it. And it's like, you know, the desire to share that can be a wonderful purpose because it's sharing, you know, and the narrative is there and there's a wonderful story. And that's at the heart of a great purpose, is telling your story in a very authentic, very relevant to your customers. So really unpacking what that relevance is in a motivating way, like you give them a really good reason to choose you and you find something that really differentiates you. And that last point, you know, it can be a real source of differentiation. So, you know, going through a process of unlocking each of those key areas, and understanding the role you play in the category. You know, I think being a challenger brand today is almost cost of entry. Even if you're a big business, you need to behave like a challenger. So, you know, I think when you go through the process, it's funny, I do it regularly with clients, and all of them have a purpose. It's just, they can struggle, and you're also caught up in the day-to-day trenches of trying to sell products and, you know, service customers, and you kind of get caught up in that you often can forget that the essence of your story and why you started.
I think there's a little bit of self-doubt. So if someone hasn't done it before, they might sort of do the course and then they go, but is this enough to move people? So what would be, so that story that you sort of mentioned that, this is my grandmother's recipe. And a lot of businesses do start because they were mucking around with a family recipe, or they had something they liked, they saw a way of making it better. And that's literally how they started,
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to those people that sort of are thinking, does their story have enough meaning or depth to resonate with potential customers?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's a key building block, and it's part of the narrative. And people are genuinely more conscious about, they want to hear those stories, and they like to inform their purchase decisions with a compelling narrative. And I think you don't need to overcook it. Like, there's 3 different ways you can look at it. There are beautiful brands out there like Patagonia, who are saving the earth. Fantastic. But there are also brands out there that are just looking at how an industry operates and are disrupting it and making it easier for people, or enhancing the experience of it, right through to people who are just, kind of trying to just solve a core business problem or deliver an experience that they think is really unique. They're all really valid, but at its heart, it gives people, it makes you mean something to people, and crafting that story and keeping it part of your narrative. Just make sure you hold on to it and be consistent. Talk about it at every touch point. Make it part of, put it on your packaging, talk about it all the time. Because that's the other thing is that, as you get in the trenches delivering, you can often forget, and you get caught up in, pricing and delivery and distribution, etc. It's making sure that story is always there for the customer to understand and experience.
I think you've raised another really interesting point, which is that actually by talking about a lot, you kind of test it on yourself. You sort of say it aloud, you think, does that sound okay? And then you say it to one person and someone else. And then over time, you become more confident that the words sound right, and you start to refine it, and then you start to own it. So we've sort of found it's often a gradual process where people kind of need to sit with their purpose for a little bit. Yeah. But you've got some great stats on your website about, the degree of engagement you can expect by having a meaningful purpose. I think you've got something like millennials are 5 times more likely to engage with the brand, and a lot of, other consumers are, something like 79% of their decisions are driven by whether they can relate to the purpose. So it's pretty important, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so. I mean, really, it's almost becoming a cost of entry, and increasingly at every level. And it's just because we're all becoming far more conscious in our consumption, and it's it feels good to choose a brand or choose a product and feel like you're having an impact of some description. And that's probably the simplest description of why purpose. And I think in many ways it'll discount, but you'll lose your competitor. You actually won't have permission to be in the market and be operating in the future unless you've got that commitment, because consumers are becoming very focused on it. But impact is really important. Sorry, I'm getting daycare updates on my phone.
Too funny. Modern, the trials and tribulations of modern living.
Absolutely.
But just actually to go back to something else you mentioned a second ago, which was so there are the purpose that has sort of this kind of more philosophical, high level meaning, like think different and just do it. But then there is the giving back one. And there are all these brands out there right now, like Who Gives a Crap or Honest Tea, that are actually dedicating a chunk of profits to doing good somewhere in the world, which is a massive commitment. And it requires not only the cost of actually handing over that chunk of money, but then also the people to manage it and make sure that everyth's being above board here, and then when it goes to its end destination, that it's being used appropriately. And that, I mean, that's admirable, but again, that's not something every business can do, is it? What's your view on how would you suggest people, I guess, get involved with those kinds of causes?
Do you know what? For me, and particularly working now with a much broader spectrum of clients and smaller clients who absolutely have asked the same question. They're like, we want to have an impact, our staff. I was working with a fantastic educational technology business. And they really wanted to make a difference for teachers around the world, and because they see the value that teachers bring. But they were like, we don't have the infrastructure to do that. How do we even start? We're so focused on making sure our platform works. We look after teachers here in Australia. And there's a wonderful business called B1G1.com. And they basically have set up around the world a kind of a system in which they can support businesses and charities and making an impact across the UNICEF kind of sustainability goals. And so we went in there and you basically, for every dollar of revenue, you can attribute a percentage of your revenue or profit to causes, and they handle the whole, so it's like micro giving. And so you can go in there and there's thousands of options in there. So you can really be purposeful about it and go in there and say, well, we're in the business of food. We want to end world poverty, you know, where people get to enjoy our food. How do we help with world poverty? You can actually pick regions. You can pick, you know, different types of food. There's so many initiatives in there. And it really, it's like a turnkey solution that really, for me, it's genius, because it it opens up access for people to very easily. And, you know, they've got so many amazing case studies in there, like accounting firms, you know, who have gone, you know, we really want to make a difference around the world. And so, you know, all types of businesses from all types of industries can go in there and you know, there was a great example of an accounting firm that was doing financing social startups and helping them with provide financial advice in those regions to support these often, you know, people just starting in relatively uneducated areas, and really helping them set themselves up for success. So it aligned with what they did, but in an area they would never have normally been able to reach or impact in their day-to-day.
That's a really great tip. So it's almost like, you know, if you might not have solar panels, but you could get your power from an ethical company, or you might not be some really savvy investor, but you could, you know, get your funds with ethical funds and stuff like that. So that's actually a really great tip. Certainly I think we'll find that interesting for some of our clients, because we have these discussions as well. So that is really lovely. And I guess just moving on, you know, just to sort of tie it back to the food sector for a moment, because that's you know, something we sort of really focus on here. Is what are some? So I've got a couple of questions here. You know, what are some businesses first of all that are really getting it right with really having a meaningful purpose that consumers are relating to?
I think, I mean, I love I never know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Chobani, you know, the yogurt company. They're a wonderful example. And I think for many reasons, they, you know, are born out of a wonderful founder narrative. So he saw a gap in the market. He just couldn't find, he was from Turkey, and he couldn't find quality, that beautiful Greek style yogurt. But more than that, he was an immigrant, and he was looking to establish himself in America. And he's very passionate about good food and the role of good food and nutrition in making people's lives better. And that organization, you know, really has impacted well beyond. I mean, they've got a wonderful purpose, which, you know, I think I wrote it down earlier actually, so I wouldn't forget, to make better food for more people. And, you know, which is one of the wonderful things about food. You can have such a great impact with it. But, you know, beyond that, like he increased the minimum wage for all of his workers. They have a pro-immigrant hiring policy. So all of the personal narrative that is anchored in why he started the business really flows through in how the business behaves. So it's hiring policies, how it takes care of its staff, even innovation in the product. It's like adding probiotics to really enhance the health of customers. So, you know, it's a hugely successful business, but, you know, I think it's you respect and you kind of don't begrudge them that financial success, because they really have made a huge impact on the world, and particularly the people that work for them, and in the States. So, you know, I think that's a great example that kind of came to mind.
Good. And what about any businesses that, that might be heritage businesses, and they might be known for doing one thing? And when you're a heritage brand, you kind of have that as your recognizable factor quite often. That you're the brand, you're Heinz or you're Arnott's, or you're the business that's been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those big established brands adopt a purpose that kind of gives more meaning to their heritage status?
Well, it's been interesting working with Cadbury on and off over the
Mm.
years. And, I often use them in my business as a case study, because they were their founder was very purpose driven. I mean, the Cadbury business was created by the founder noticing the impact of alcohol on his local community in Bournemouth during the industrial era. And
Oh
so
yeah.
it was a milk bar with choc milk, and it was an alternative to alcohol to try and enhance the health and well-being of. And then it went beyond that as it grew as a business. And then he created the Factory in a Garden, which was a factory that made the Cadbury chocolate products. But he built it in a garden because he saw the health of workers in factories in the UK. They were dying early, and the disease and the impact of pollution was horrific. So he, created a garden and fresh air and an environment for his workers to thrive and still participate and grow, but he did it the right way. And so, the origins of the business are amazing. But then over time, much like Nike and everyone else, they kind of went through a period where it was all about the product and basically
Yes.
talking about product
Mm.
excellence and product
Taking up more
performance
shelf
and
space, and yeah.
totally. And so from Cadbury's perspective, I was really fortunate to be working at Saatchi's when they were in this phase, and they were doing Moment of Joy. And, from an advertiser's perspective, amazing brief to be producing all these beautiful content. Most people can remember the gorilla ad and, great entertaining, where they were
Yes.
literally saying, our brand is synonymous with this wonderful experience of joy you get when you eat our
Yeah.
chocolate, which
Yeah.
was great. But then, I was also working on the brand when the palm oil crisis started to evolve, which is, I
Mm.
guess, is similar to Nike having their sweatshop,
Of course.
kind of
Yeah.
disruption. And really it forced the business to go, well, we can't just live and die by our product experience.
Mm.
We need to understand what our purpose is and the role that we play in society, and be conscious of the impact we have beyond just a product experience.
Mm.
And they are now 100% sustainably sourced cocoa, and they've changed. And it was a wholesale change in how they produced their
Yeah.
chocolate. Now they're moving towards recyclable packaging, and so and even their brand positionings come back to there's a glass and a half in everyone, and it's more
Mm.
about the shared values with everyone, and that it means more than just a really lovely kind of product experience. So I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
for me, that's
Mm.
that's also a
That's
really good example
that is
of
a
I
great
guess an
story.
enduring. Yeah. And I think most of those big brands now, you'll probably see a similar kind of course, where they've been born out of a business that had a wonderful kind of purpose and narrative to their creation. And if they've endured through decades and decades, they've probably tracked in a similar fashion. And many of them are coming back now to the roots of why they were created, but also kind of going, right, well, what role do we play in society beyond just
Mm.
delivering great products that people love?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a really great story, because I have noticed the new messaging on Cadbury products, but I wasn't
Mm,
aware of that backstory.
yeah.
And now we're not about naming and shaming here at BRANDCORE. We like to keep things really positive. But I guess my other question was, I guess, are there any businesses you could sort of refer it to a sector in general, sort of rather than singling anyone out, but
Mm.
are there any businesses, food businesses out there that are kind of really due for, that they've lost their sense of purpose, and they kind of really need to um, find that again, or
Yeah.
risk alienating a large amount of their market?
Yeah. Oh, it's always an interesting question. I mean, I think really, you could describe businesses that put profit before purpose. So people,
Yeah.
businesses that are all about market share, and a lot of them, I guess in the food industry, it's been interesting looking at brands like Domino's versus Pizza Hut, for example. and you look at one that's grown significantly and one that's really kind of struggled to maintain relevance and market share.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Domino's, you know, I've worked on the Domino's business, and innovation and technology plays a big role in it. But
Yes.
a lot of that is about facilitating. They talk about people-powered pizza. And a big part of that is about capturing insights, understanding behavior, creating products that caters to their needs, etc. So it's kind of, you know, you can start to see how that dynamic, whereas another dynamic that's about, you know, how do we get almost like the factory line of getting things kind of produced quicker, more homogenous, you know,
Yeah.
kind of not as much ability to personalize, cater, adapt. You know, you can kind of see the difference there, and you can start to see trends across different industries as well as, I guess, food sectors where, you know, if there isn't that kind of sense of customer at the heart of what they're doing and really understanding what that value proposition is, rather than just purely about, you know, increasing margins, increasing market share, etc. You know, I don't know how sustainable that is. And I think there are
Yeah.
brands out there that are really looking at how they can have an enduring, you know, relationship and what that means and how to repivot. And, you know, I know the likes of Pizza Hut, etc., are certainly from, you know, they're hiring really interesting people and they're looking at their business model. And, you know, I think we're starting to see those changes happening and more brands in the space understanding the role it plays.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, I mean, the conversations we're having, you know, suggesting that, you know, that the majors were, you know, the Coles and the Woolworths, that used to be all about, you know, faster, cheaper, more kind of approach. And
Yeah.
now they're increasingly supporting niche businesses and localized businesses that can't supply all 600 stores nationally, but
Yeah.
create something beautiful that there's a local market for. So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
seems to be very exciting. Yeah, from our
Yeah.
perspective anyway. And I know we don't have tons more time, but I would love you to share maybe a case study that you've worked on that you know, that was really rewarding or exciting for you to bring a refreshed sense of purpose to that brand.
Yeah. I think I might get you to indulge me a little bit because it's not a food brand, but
Sure.
it's a recent example that is very close to my heart, and you know, I really enjoyed working on, which was a business called AUS, or Aboriginal United Services. They're over here in WA. And they have a wonderful business that's about providing all kinds of essential services, from traffic controllers through to movement of fuel to a lot of the big mining companies here in WA. And they have a commitment to have a minimum ratio of 50% Indigenous employees. And they really are very passionate about the key to closing the gap is economic development and Indigenous employment. And that's what their core business is all about. So beautiful purpose, you know, didn't
Yeah.
really need to, but
Yeah.
when they engaged me, they were saying, listen, we need some help in our positioning, because we're finding we have to explain, it's arduous for us to kind of get our foot in the door, explain what we're doing, and really get our partners on board to help us on this journey. We've got a really good system. It works now. We're retaining them. We're developing them. We think we can have an impact, but we really need to open the door up and create these connections with our, and it was interesting because I was like, well, all of your customers are the big mining companies and they have these big ESG, you know, commitments in this space, and in fact a lot of them actually have to hit Indigenous employment targets to have a license to operate. So I was like, I find it, you know, it was interesting that they were having issues getting traction. Now, their positioning was innovative solutions by traditional people. And in my first meeting with them, I said, I don't understand what that means. And they said, no, most people don't. And they said, but it's great because it starts a conversation. The confusion actually gets them talking to us. And I was like, oh, great. But I said, you know, really, you could be doing a lot more heavy lifting, and you could be reflecting what your purpose is in a far more succinct and compelling way. The other issue that they had was that, you know, they are 50% Indigenous employees, but there's also non-Indigenous employees. And when they talked about innovative solutions by traditional people, it felt like they were hidden, so that it wasn't a collective team. It wasn't reflecting the whole business, who were just as passionate about closing the gap. as any other employee in the business. So we ended up recrafting their purpose, and their purpose statement, leveraging their name of Aboriginal United Services, is United we stand for a better future. And they basically say that collectively and all Australians will have a better future. We can't leave anyone behind. So that economic development is there. It rallied the staff, but what it also did was it gave them permission to start having conversations beyond procurement managers. And they started talking to their customers and actually saying, right, we need to have minimum 3-year contracts to develop all of our employees from basic services through to highly qualified trades. Are you prepared to partner with us and have an impact on the future of their lives and also all Indigenous community? And their whole commercial model changed. They renegotiated in the first 6 months over half of their contracts.
Wow.
So, you know, for me, it's not just a statement. It's not just words. It reflects what drives the business, and it can create organizational behavior and describe a model of business that, you know, can actually fuel the growth of that business. So, and, you know, for me as well, like the impact that they've had, I mean, they've literally doubled in revenue. I spoke to their recruitment lady the other day, and she said it's like drinking from a fire hose, the amount of briefs they're getting through, which is wonderful. It's like, it's, you know, it's really, it's a wonderful, you know, kind of impact to have. And it's just, you know, sometimes it's just the nuance of getting a positioning where everyone goes, oh, okay. And when we presented it to staff, one of their recruitment managers, at the end of it, we did a manifesto and we talked about what it meant. Kind of when and she wasn't Indigenous herself, she said, I've got absolute goosebumps. Like I feel so proud to be part of this. And she'd always been part of it, but it was just because of how it had been articulated. So that's my favorite child at the moment.
No, thanks for sharing that with us. That's great. I'm happy that you went a little bit off piece there with that one. But it does tie back to one of the things you said right at the start of our chat, which is that strategy solves business problems. So what you're kind of demonstrating there is that while it's a beautiful set of words and it's got that poetry to it, but it actually helped them redesign their business model and how they were going to pitch their value, you know, over the long term to different businesses. So that's a really great example. Yeah, thanks, Megan. Now, you do have a way with words, and I was going to ask, you know, so if someone was to get in touch with you, so it's Mod Project, which I believe on Instagram is Modco Project.
Yep, and modproject.com.au.
Yep.
And all my contact details are on there.
Course, and if they were to go to your course, you know, they go through, you know, you mentioned that you've got sort of 3 types of services. So there's the self-guided workshop that you offer, and then there's the, you know, book a chunk of Megan's time service, and then there's the hourly consulting. If someone gets to the end of their course and they still want to kind of check in with you to see if they've sort of articulated the meaning that they're after, is that something that you could potentially offer as a follow-up?
So during the course, there's actually opportunities to chat to me throughout, so you can particularly as you're doing the building blocks, and then there's also an opportunity at the end just to kind of, because wordsmithing, there's guidelines there to kind of wordsmith it, but there's always a chance, and that's actually, I love it because it really, for me, as soon as I read it, it often, you know, it's very quick to be able to kind of just finesse or craft it slightly to get it to a point that really kind of feels right. But it's, you know, the building blocks are designed to just kind of try and I think every business I've worked with has a wonderful purpose at its heart. It's just kind of going through that purpose to kind of extract, or going through the steps just to extract it.
That is great to know that they've got you on call, because you helped us with a client challenge last year, and we bounced around a lot of ideas with getting that purpose right. And in the end, you know, you came in and pulled it together. And it was just fantastic to have that not only outside perspective, but the expert outside perspective. So yes, to anyone who's watching, we highly recommend. So I know we should let you get back to your day soon, but I just wondered if you could leave us with just some final tips, anything you haven't mentioned already for businesses out there who are very much either at that starting or pivoting stage of their business,
Yeah.
where they, you know, might need to really, just some extra tips to really help them articulate their purpose.
I mean, really, you know, even the purpose blueprint kind of boils down to really four key things.
Mm-hmm.
One is authenticity. You know, why did you start in the first place? You know, what's in your DNA? Like, why are you here? What relevance? You know, what problem are you solving or could be solving that really means something to people? So being relevant's really important. Motivating, you know, most businesses can find an aspect to what they do that is particularly good, that is potentially better than someone else, that will motivate a customer to choose you. So think about what they are and focus on them. And often when you're small or starting up, remembering and focusing on that rather than chasing everything that's about, can really kind of help drive that growth. And then being, you know, differentiated, have a stance, you know, have a personality and work out what you stand for in your industry and category. And that gives you, you know, a tone of voice and a way of telling your narrative in a really kind of interesting way that's going to get their attention, because that's the other side of it as well.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, kind of thinking around those four key areas, you know, is a good place to start.
Yeah. So authenticity, relevance, the motivational factor, and the
Differentiation. Yeah.
Completely unique. Those are great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing those.
Thank you for interviewing me. It's been fun.
Good. I'm glad. I hope it's the first of many more, because you've got some fantastic experience that's definitely worth sharing with anyone out there who needs that kind of service. So thanks again, Megan, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Right. So that was another fantastic episode of BRANDCORE. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. So purpose, that's your mantra for today. And we will be sharing those tips in writing later on, both here on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And of course, you can follow Modco Project on Instagram and chase up their various details to find out more. So we'll be joined in coming weeks by stylists, PR experts, and others. So do make sure to watch out for our weekly promos and stories on BRANDCORE. We hope to see you another time. Have a great weekend, everyone.